Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Happy Friday. Today is February 25th, and equities were roaring into the close yesterday. That brought Bitcoin back up to the 40K level. Got a little bit of sell pressure at that level, but brought a lot of alts up there with it. Markets looking relatively strong today. So lots to dive into. Before we do, CJ, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Monty. Yeah, I'm really excited to look at some charts because there's just been so much interesting price action all over the place. You were showing me, yeah, we'll show that one in just a moment. But that was quite interesting. I also want to take a look at Bitcoin here, because we are getting technical signs that a bottom could be potentially in for at least the short term. Obviously, that's subject to global events and continued uncertainty. But in the short term, the market has been pretty wiped here. Obviously, finding some resistance at 40K and 41K, that's going to be critical. But we're going to go through. I do want to present a trade setup as well, kind of a freebie as well later in the episode. But yeah, excited to check it out. I mean, how are you doing, Monty?
Yeah, I'm doing well, CJ. Doing well. Like you said, market's looking relatively strong today, particularly crypto. We had some assets like Luna, up as much as 30%, over the last 24 hours. So making some really, really strong moves. And, I think a lot of that comes on the close we got from traditional equities yesterday. The Qs looked particularly strong. I think that gave a lot of leeway for Bitcoin to do its thing and make a move up. But also, I just want to quickly touch on before you dive into the charts is just some headlines that have been, coming across over the last 12 hours here involving the Russia-Ukraine conflict. First and foremost, Ukrainian central bank suspends electronic cash transfers, bolstering the use case for crypto. And then we saw this headline come across: Bitcoin donations to Ukrainian military are soaring as Russia invades. So, interesting use case there. A lot of people have been, just looking at Bitcoin as, entirely a risk asset, but really, there is use beyond that, and we're seeing that take hold here in this global conflict. But beyond that, CJ, one thing, that chart that you meant that I was showing you before the show was the Moscow exchange that wiped away, 2 years worth of gains in the matter of days. Like you said, they halted short trading. Look at that chart. I mean, absolutely insane. So, this is a global event on a scale that I personally, haven't really seen in my lifetime. And, it's bound to have long lasting effects. So, this has been an insanely volatile week. It's going to be interesting to see, how Bitcoin responds heading into the weekend here. But yeah, CJ, what are you thinking from a technical perspective here as we start this Friday?
Yeah, the buy the invasion type charts that's been going around Twitter a lot. I'm starting to see a little bit of the merit, at least for a reaction rally. Doesn't mean that we have to rally to all-time highs. We'll cross that bridge if we come to it. Just as, when people say, oh, we're going to 15K or 25K, well, let's just get into that range and then we can talk about those price levels first. But I do want to start here with the DXY. Very bullish, but overall, I don't want to I'm not really interested in doing business at the midpoint of the range. I'll explain why. But as you can see here, we reached the top of the range, tried to make a run at it yesterday, and were then rejected. As of now, based on the close, we've created a lower high. It looks almost as we're just kind of trending down to this midpoint of equilibrium. We'll see what happens at that point. But when you're in the midpoint of the range like that, it's kind of the equivalent of being in no man's land. I think the place in which you want to take positions, and of course with a tight stop, is either top of the range or bottom of the range. When you're in the mid range like this, you're dealing with a lot of chop, and you don't have as high a probability price is going to break in your direction. So to find the range, only play at the range extremes of upper and lower. Definitely something to think about if you're considering playing short trades, because obviously these violent short covering rallies are just make it very difficult to have profitable shorts, even if you might be right on the direction of the market. Like for instance, in 2000 and 2001, when we were coming down after the dot-com rally, there were violent short squeezes. And even if you were right long-term about the direction, you could have gotten squeezed out of your short positions. And there's nothing worse than being right, but not making any money on it. That's always not that great. But something that's interesting that we're seeing pretty uniform around various markets is divergence among RSI and a lot of momentum indicators. Also, one that has been very uh, famous at calling local bottoms is just sequential. And this is even more prominent in Bitcoin. And I want to go through some examples as well in just a moment. But after we reach these nines, typically we get a little bit of a reaction rally into the midpoint of the range or resistance. Now it's quite interesting because we're breaking back into the range that we traded in for nearly a few months. And it looks as if we're going to make a test at least, the midpoint of this, minor range, which would be roughly 4,400. And then ultimately potentially put in another lower high at around 4,500. But of course, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The one thing that's like difficult to predict, and why even though these setups are like bullish, and I would probably take them on a shorter term perspective if we didn't have such global uncertainty. Let's say China makes a move on Taiwan. Obviously, that could throw a monkey wrench into things without a doubt. Also, the more desperate Putin becomes, the more nervous I become because like he's more prone to rash decisions, obviously. I don't want to pontificate on what could happen, but the premise of uncertainty is not wavering by any stretch of the imagination. Nasdaq still down today, but still making a nice comeback on that bullish engulfing candle. Looks like we want to make a run at like kind of the midpoint of a lot of these ranges. Rates are up, or they were up a little bit earlier. Now they're coming back down. But you see the nines again. We topped on one very recently in the TNX. If you would have shorted these nines in the past month, we have that right there where you can cover for a short gain. You can cover right there for a short game as well. And most recently, so it's been about 3 for 3 in the last month in terms of those nines. So good to see rates coming down for equities, at least in the short term. But now to Bitcoin and what I want to focus on in terms of like sequential. So we see we have a 9 here, and we also have these wicks. So we are seeing a decent amount of supply absorption. We also have that same type of divergence that we had talked about in the S&P as well as other indices. Now, can we go and visit these range lows and potentially even go to 29K? Yeah, I'm not ruling that out at any stretch, and I'm not going to rule that out. However, while we're in the midpoint of this much larger range, it's kind of like being in no man's land because we have a pretty decent shot at making a run at either of these directions right now. I lean more towards the upside potential because we do have this sequential 9, and I'll explain the significance of that in a moment. But something that we've seen a lot throughout Bitcoin's history, specifically with these sequential 9s, is that when we get near local tops or extremes in terms of the market cycle in these ranges, you can see that this did pretty much mark the local top at about 62,000. Now, of course, we still rallied to new highs by about $3,000, but in the grand scheme of things, it was not that much. And, we could do something similar at the bottom of this range that we're currently at and still, bottom and have an opportunity. So, with this in mind, with this particular setup, I want to show the current setup now and invert it because I think it looks extraordinarily similar to basically what we saw at the top around the $60,000 levels. We have the sequential 9 that basically has marked the bottom thus far. And then we kind of have created another one of those wicks, shooting star candles. And it looks like we're going to make a run. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't put money on it, but it looks as if we are going to make kind of a reaction rally to the midpoint of that range. Now, if we see weakness from the midpoint of that range, or if we don't even get to it and we start creating, lower highs, then I would look to short to the bottom of this range. But, we're not there yet. Sometimes the best thing to do is nothing, especially in extreme kind of market conditions like this. But, nice local bottom at least put in. So I don't want to make any altcoin trades just yet because of this uncertainty and just not really being in any clear-cut position with Bitcoin. We're still in no man's land, like I had kind of suggested. Wouldn't mind buying a little bit of spot to just ride this potential reaction rally, but I wouldn't put anything substantial on it. The one trade idea or the setup that I would suggest that is quite interesting, and I'm not entering this one because of the range that Bitcoin is in and the uncertainty that it's still facing. But if we rally, say, to the next resistance level at roughly 41K or 42K, I do think there are some altcoins with some notable setups. First, I want to talk about sand, which is quite interesting. And this this lends even more credence to the idea of like not messing around when you're at the midpoint of these ranges, because they're just very difficult to trade. I think like I'm much more interested in doing business at the extremes of the ranges because they lead to higher probabilities that, you know, we kind of go back towards the midpoint. So furthermore, you can see that our last nine is like very identical to what we just got yesterday. Not only do we have the supply absorption with the wick, we also have the TD sequential 9, and it is of course off the bottom of the range. So this one looks like a optimal target for a potential long trade to the midpoint of that range. Then say if we see some continued weakness, a lower high gets put in, I'd look to short that level back to the bottom of the range, take some of your profit off the table, then say we go below, I wouldn't do anything. If we get rejected and this range now becomes formerly support turned into resistance, I'd look for downward continuation to the potential bottom of the range at roughly 180. But before anything like that happens, I think it's more likely that we go to 360 or potentially even $4. So interesting setup right there with sand. Obviously, it's very contingent on Bitcoin, but that is the technical trading setup that I basically use and I try to approach the markets with. So talked for a long time there, Monty. I'm going to give you your time back.
No, that was good stuff, CJ. Thank you for that. More or less a textbook TD9 there, and you did a good job showing how it reacted on the back of that last night at the same range. So good stuff there. Thank you for that trade setup. I just want to quickly go back to Bitcoin real quick. Just kind of go over some points that you made. First and foremost being that 40K level and what's it going to take for us to get over that level. Obviously, we've seen some heavy sell pressure into this level. We saw it last night. We saw it again here just this morning. Some pretty heavy profit taking up at this 40K level. And one thing I think is pretty obvious and something that we've been talking a lot about over the last couple of weeks here is Bitcoin's relationship with the Qs. And part of the reason why Bitcoin was able to show such positive price action during the last couple of hours of the U.S. equity markets yesterday, I think is definitely at least partially attributed to the positive price action we're showing in the Qs. So we saw that nice positive price action when the market closed. Bitcoin's been more or less indecisive. We haven't really made a strong move to either direction. Looking somewhat strong right now, but again, getting sold into at that critical 40K level. So one thing I think will be important to overcoming this significant hurdle will be for the Qs to flip green on the day. Right now they're still red. This is just the 4-hour chart. But I think that if we get some momentum going, get some more speculation back in tech, that's typically indicative of more risk-on investment behavior and just a higher risk tolerance in general from short-term speculators. And I think that will be critical to getting Bitcoin above that critical 40K level. I mean, like I keep saying, it's been sold into hard. People quick to take profits after these moves, but I think if we can get some steam going in the Qs, I think that could translate to some positive price action for Bitcoin. So I'm just watching the Qs here today. Like I said already, we're kind of coming back a little bit, as you can see here, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on because if we can get these green, I think that gives Bitcoin, a little bit of leeway to perhaps break above that 40K level. So beyond that, just going to keep watching those things you mentioned, CJ. And anything you want to add before we close up?
We were talking about interesting charts at the start of the show with Moscow Exchange. I want to take a look at another one. This was like you had all the gold bugs on Twitter coming out and being like, there's only one true gold. it's not Bitcoin. And of course, we topped like minutes later. But I like the 30-minute chart. The 30-minute chart really shows like how extreme this move was, where basically you have, and this shows like the entire kind of mood of the market, but overall you have, wow, a 4% move in gold. That's a lot. And then immediately sold into of roughly 5%. So, I mean, yeah, the market movements as of late, the volatility is just, you don't see it every day. Even if you're hanging around in markets for years, these type of events don't happen often. And so just interesting to see how price can react in extreme situations like that. But that's all I've got for today, Monty. I'll leave it with you, my friend.
Yeah, no, that's about all I got for today too. As always, we'll be doing our members only Doge of the day after this with some more specific trade insights. CJ gave you a little taste of what those look like with the sand setup there. We got a few more on deck for the Doge of the day. So if you guys want access to that, you can sign up and get access to the crypto room at the link below, markrebellion.com/try crypto. Got a pro charting service, a chat with traders from all around the world. We publish actionable trade insights, like CJ just showed there, and a whole lot more. We have an education curriculum, publish news, and yeah, definitely come check it out. Like I said, you'll get access to the Doge of the day, which is right after this, and also our cocktail hour, which is tonight at 4 p.m. Central. But that is all we got for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It definitely helps out the channel. But have a great day and a great weekend. We'll see you guys again on Monday. Take care.